Hello everybody, it is time for the final pour on the Oz table, and first I get to play doctor with a syringe. So I've got to do 4 big pours on this table, and it's very important that all of the colors come out the same. So I use the syringe to make sure that my recipe for the dye is always the same. Most of the times I do these on a live with the customer watching so they could tell me if they like the color or not. In this particular case, my customer was actually standing right behind me. She was a little handsy, so I had to watch myself. And I'm pretty sure she even Joe Biden sniffed me. So it's always a good idea to have a little clear cup there with you. That way you can look at what the epoxy will look like in the table. Looking through the bucket, it will be a lot darker because you're looking through a lot more epoxy. So right here, it's about the color we want it to be for our table, but we're gonna go ahead and put some black dye in because like I said, it's a lot darker in the pail than it is when you put it into the table. And at this point, I think I got it just the way I want it, but we're gonna go ahead and check it with a clear cup. That's exactly what we're going for, so it is time to degas it. Degassing is the process of removing all of the microbubbles from the epoxy using a vacuum chamber. Now, for most people, you're not going to have to worry about degassing. The only time you have to do it is when you're pouring thicker and trying to get extremely clear. As long as you're using a good deep pour epoxy like Wisebond and keep it cool with a fan on it, you should be good to go. The bubbles that can be seen visibly typically will go away. And if you do see them in a table, chances are it's more likely that it leaked out of the wood than it did appear as microbubbles. So you can't really see microbubbles unless you're super up close and have awesome eyesight, but for the most part, it just appears as slightly cloudy. And if you add any pigment to it, you're really not gonna notice that anyway. But here I'm doing a dye and not a pigment, and I want this to be ultra clear. You could see that before we started this pour that the wood looked like it was sealed. It really wasn't. I just put a layer of clear coat epoxy on there about 24 hours before I did this pour to help prevent the green from soaking up into the wood. I used that big catheter syringe here to pull some out of the middle and put it back on the outside because I poured a little bit too much on the outside. And then I also use it to fill in any pits or holes or cracks that are on the top of the table. More will definitely open up when we go to surface the table. So this ounce of prevention isn't necessarily worth the pound of cure, but it is definitely worth doing because you're there, you already got the tools ready, might as well. See, I put a couple of big hunks of epoxy on there, and that was just to kind of weight it down a little bit. My seal coat was a little thin, and I was nervous the wood was going to try to float. Keep it cool.